together with a poem I wrote for this occasion for our community, and it's inspired by the couple of weeks Melody and I spent in on line 3 in Minnesota. It's called Walking in the Water. It is a prayer from line 3. Walking together with canoes in the Willow River, in the North Woods, quiet beauty, indigenous sisters in the lead, holding space between drill pads while police and workers look on. In the water for hours while the rain came down, not dampened, but nurtured by each other and by our call for the protection of the water and the earth and all that is sacred. Not once did we question where we walked, nor why we endured. No worries about the effects or whether it would turn the tide, whether we would go to jail. Our witness was enough. We listened to our surroundings, to our hearts, to the water, the land, the sky, to our relations here and beyond, present in the miracle and the mystery of our being on the one blue planet, our only home, hurtling and spinning through the darkness of space. We humans, small in this flowing river, belong to so much more than ourselves. Nature calls us to awaken from the dark, to join hands with creation, to live up to the promise of our existence in the here and now. Peacemakers, my fellow peacemakers, we walk not alone, nor apart from the flow that carries us and holds us in the midst of this storm. Together, we carry a light for all to see. Let us fear not, doubt not, as we show the way ahead. We know the way of the Spirit, caring over fear, life over profits, peace over war, sharing over greed, stewardship over extraction, the common good over self-interest, future generations over this solitary moment, love over hate. Blessed are we to be peacemakers in this time and place, to walk in the water, to show the way, remembering in our hearts who we are, who came before, who will follow, protecting and projecting the spirit of this creation that flows within us and around us. Thank you.
And thank you, Ken, for that moving and really marvelous poem to begin this meeting with. That was amazing, and as I said, extremely pertinent to what we're about. So, on behalf of North Carolina Peace Action, I welcome all of you to our annual Peacemaker Award celebration. This is our 40th anniversary. We began in 1981 as an affiliate of the SANE organization, the National Committee for a Sane Nuclear Policy. They were trying to stop nuclear testing above ground in the atmosphere. In 1981, North Carolina SANE worked on the nuclear freeze campaign to stop the freeze the production and deployment of nuclear weapons. As a result of that campaign, the Raleigh City Council passed a resolution supporting a nuclear freeze. Then in 1987, the freeze movement joined SANE to become SANE Freeze. And William Sloan Coffin was the president of SANE Freeze at that time. He came to the Triangle area in the fall of 1988, and he gave talks in Chapel Hill and Raleigh, and The title for his talk was "For the World to Survive." A few years later, the name of the organization was changed to Peace Action. North Carolina Peace Action has always been focused on eliminating the danger of nuclear weapons. But wider issues of war and peace have also been addressed. We still oppose nuclear weapons. And now the passage of the United Nations Treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons has given us an additional way to oppose them. North Carolina Peace Action has joined the international campaign to abolish nuclear weapons, which is encouraging cities to pass resolutions supporting the treaties. And cities worldwide have done so. And we're asking North Carolina cities to pass for similar resolutions. And Asheville has already done that as well. In November, National Peace Action is organizing virtual lobby days in DC, focusing on 3 issues: nuclear disarmament, reducing the Pentagon budget, and ending military aid for the Yemen war. North Carolina Peace Action will be participating in this where we can, where we're able. So I want to end this by welcoming all of you again to this Peacemaker celebration and thanking you for your support and for the work you do to bring about a more peaceful nation and world.
Thanks so much, Joe. Hello, everyone. I'm George Friday. I have the honor of being staff person for North Carolina Peace Action. I also have the, I don't know the right word for it, but the blessing of St. Freeze. First it was Sane, then St. Freeze, being my first job, my first real job. So that's a cool thing. But I'm here to tell you about tonight's protocols. We are going to have such a great time together tonight. And we'll end on time, but moving on time means we'll not be rushed, but we won't do a lot of chatter. If you're not familiar with Zoom, welcome, glad you're here. Down at the bottom of your screen, if you're on a laptop, if you put your mouse down to the bottom of your screen, in the middle, you'll see something that says chat. And it looks like a little balloon that's on a cartoon. If you select that, you can write a little note to all of us or write a note to an individual. And I will look for, and Doug Ryder, thanks Doug, is a co-host at the moment. So he and I will look for questions that are in the chat that may come up for any of our presenters or our keynote speaker this evening. And we'll address all of those questions after giving our awards and hearing from our keynote speaker. So it'll be about 8 o'clock before we start doing questions and answers. I think that covers about everything. And I now have the wonderful honor of introducing our first Peacemaker Award winners. So some years ago, while doing work with the movement to end racism and Islamophobia, I got to meet this wonderful human being named Layla Ali. And I later found out Layla was affiliated with Muslim Women For. And the energy and vibrance of this young person and the work of the organization, which is so on point about core principles of peace and justice. Just wonderful, wonderful work. So I want to let you know what our Peacemaker Award says about the group. So let me share with you our presentation to them. So this will be our Young Peacemaker Award for 2021 to the Muslim Women For organization for taking steps and doing the real work to build a future where Islam is understood as a source of dignity, justice, compassion, and love for all humanity and the world, presented on October 26th by North Carolina Peace Action. So it is my honor and pleasure to introduce from Muslim Women For. And I'm not sure if there are two people or one person, but I know Layla Ali is here. So we're going to have Layla. And is there anyone else, Layla, I should put on?
So Iman is here with me as well, who is the other co-founder. I know that
And it
she's in the,
says Layla Ali,
it should be Iman Ali.
Iman Ali. Can you spell for me so I can
Hi,
find it?
everyone. My name is Iman.
I see Aman. Hey. Okay,
Hi.
so let me see. Now I've got to Groovy. Does that work? Yes.
Thank you.
No, you got to get this technology going, y'all, on Zoom. I didn't know if I had it going on, but please, my sisters, thank you.
Thank you so much, George. It has been such an honor learning from you and working with you in North Carolina and just kind of being part of this movement with you. You are such an inspiration and a powerhouse in our community. So I really appreciate you so much. And hi, everyone. My name is Layla, and I'm one of the co-founders and the policy and program director here at Muslim Women For. And I want to take a moment and just hand space a little bit to Iman to introduce herself as well.
Hi, everyone. I'm also one of the co-founders, and I'm the director of development with Muslim Women For. And it's so nice to be here and honored to be awarded this. And I'm just really happy to be part of this beautiful community.
Thank you. Yes. And I know that some of our other folks on our team were not able to make it, but they are sending their love and sincere gratitude to everyone. Again, we're so honored to share space with all of you today and so grateful for receiving this award and Peace Action's commitment to building a world free of oppression and violence. And I would love to spend some time here today, if that's okay, sharing a little bit about Muslim Women For and kind of our story that brought us here. And George introduced us so beautifully. Thank you. And one thing I'll add is, we are a local grassroots organization that is led by Muslim women and works to center the identities and issues and vision of BIPOC Muslim women in North Carolina through political education, advocacy, cross-community solidarity building, and healing justice. And myself and two of my best friends, Iman and Doha Medani, co-founded the organization about 5 years ago, which was in the midst of the 2016 presidential elections, where we were witnessing unprecedented levels of anti-Muslim rhetoric. And it was shortly after 3 young Muslims from our own community were killed by their neighbor in their home in Chapel Hill, Dia Barakat Razan Abu Salha and Yusur Abu Salha, which was a time that left many of us shattered, angry, defeated, and especially for young Muslims in our community and really across the country, questioning how do we move forward? What does change mean and look like for our community? And for us, the 3 of us specifically, it was creating Muslim Women For, which initially started as a storytelling and healing space where we started meeting at college libraries. We were all in college back then, and our local mosques to start having thoughtful and intentional conversations with our people about what issues were important to them, what liberation looks like for our community, a liberation that is rooted in global movements, indigenous protection, and dismantling of institutionalized Islamophobia and anti-Blackness. And we realized and we learned that we live in a state that has over 50,000 Muslim Americans, a state where Black Muslims first organized mosques and Islamic schools and organized movements and successful businesses as early as the 50s, and where we know Muslim women who we believe are at the center of our work are under a constant state of surveillance and have to navigate policies and institutions that were designed to take away our safety and power. And for us, we aren't only working to ensure that Muslim voices are part of the resistance, but that we are organizing Muslims year-long to take action and to build power in our community. So I'll end there. And again, thank you so much for thinking of us for this award. It means a lot.
Imam, did you want to share any words?
I think Layla covered it all. I'm just, like I said, glad to be here. And yeah, the work that we've done over the years has been really challenging and strenuous, and things have been so unpredictable. We've had to shift with the elections and with everything going digital. We've had to shift gears a lot and figure things out, but with the help of our community and folks like you all, it's been able to happen, and we've been able to really foster this vibrant community, even from no matter where we are. Daha at this time, she's in Atlanta. I'm in New York City. I'm pursuing my grad degree, and we've still been able to make it work. And so it's just been really an honor to have the support of so many people like you all in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. My name's Rachel Bliss, and I am very proud tonight to recognize Reject Raytheon Asheville as our Peace Action Peacemakers of the Year. It's kind of ironic as North Carolina Peace Action is celebrating 40 years of doing peace work. We, our Reject Raytheon, is celebrating its first anniversary. We just found out a year ago and about 4 days ago that Raytheon was coming into our community. And a lot of people organized together, young and old, male, female, just a hodgepodge of people in the Asheville area to reject one of these military industrial complex businesses that is disturbing the peace in Asheville. So all I want to say as I introduce our speakers is we in Western North Carolina, we also named Asheville, Reject Raytheon Asheville as our Peacemakers of the Year as well. And our certificate said, way to go, Reject Raytheon Asheville. Movers and shakers, walkers, paddlers, letter writers, researchers, truth tellers, risk takers, demonstrators, artists, planet and life lovers, change makers, and best of all, peacemakers. As you've just seen, our certificate for Reject Raytheon has been put on the screen, and it is with love and admiration that I give this award today to all the members of Reject Raytheon and at Reject Raytheon Asheville for standing for a just, local, and life-sustaining future for people in Western North Carolina by working to deny access to military industrial complex corporations. And may you continue to work as hard as you can to keep peace in our city and our county. And I think I will start by having Ken Jones say a little bit about Reject Raytheon and others in the group who are on this call. Thank you.
Okay, let me express a lot of gratitude for this award, not only on behalf of the coalition, but on behalf of the work that we do. And it's an honor for people to see the work that we're doing. I do want to acknowledge who is in our coalition, some of whom are on this call and many of whom are not. We came together, as Rachel said, there were 4 organizations, well, 3 first, and it became 4 organizations that banded together in this coalition. It's Veterans for Peace and the Sunrise Movement, Democratic Socialists of America, and Party for Socialism and Liberation. And there are other people who are not part of the organizations. I want to acknowledge at least some of the people in our coalitions, those who are here, and some of the younger members who are not here, especially because they have been quite a driving force for us to keep going and to have the passion that we do. So those that I noticed that are on this call is Rachel, who just spoke, Ann Craig is here, Bob Brown, Chris Berg, Cindy Heil, Melody Shank, Susan Oler. And the 4 or 5 young people that I want to raise up and acknowledge in particular, and there are others, but in particular for their driving force in our coalition are Elsa Enstrom, Jenny Andre, Victoria Estes, Claire Clark, and Kristen Molina Nauert. We couldn't do it alone. We couldn't do it without the strength of our young and old and everyone else. The only other thing I want to say before turning this over to my partner, Melody, who has some things that she wants to show you in a slideshow about our actions, is that we do stand against Raytheon. We reject Raytheon and Pratt & Whitney, their division that come here. But that's not all. It's not that we just only center in on that one plant that they're building here. We are against the very roots of the thing that is a symptom of. And that's what we're talking about: endless wars and imperialism, climate emergency, environmental destruction, certainly war profiteering, poverty, economic precarity. That means that people are desperate for good jobs when the war industrial complex comes around. The racial injustices that are so prevalent in our society, and here in Asheville included. We are staying against politicians who are bought and sold by the ruling class, by the ubiquitous surveillance that we deal with all the time now, by the secrecy that we are subject to by policymakers and business people. But we also stand for things. And of course, we stand for a Green New Deal and for changing the funding, for funding sustainable energy and green jobs and affordable housing and all the things that I know you know that we need in our society. So that's just to put a better understanding that we're not simply trying to oppose a plant. We're trying to use the plant as a lightning rod to expose a lot of the other things going on in our society. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Melody Shank.
Thanks, Ken. I was going to share a few slides, which means I have to share my screen, so that you can understand what it is that we've been doing a little bit anyway. Let's see. Oh, I can't do it. Okay. So
I'm working on it, Melody.
Okay, thanks, George.
By the time I have it going, you'll have like 3.5 minutes or so.
All right. Ken is right that we organized quite quickly, and there was a lot of energy at the beginning around what we could possibly do. And it's been an exciting 11 months of actions. All right, so maybe I can do it now. And we've attempted to bring awareness as well as to disrupt people's understanding of what's happening. All right. So I'm going to go quickly through these slides so that I stay within our time. I just wanted to give you a sense of what it is that is coming to Asheville. Just are some slides of the plant site. This is a plant site that was completely forested, and now you can see the scar that's in the forest, and some more progressive pictures of what's been happening in our, sorry, there you go. There's a bridge being built. Here's the most recent picture of the bridge. This is the plant. This is the destruction that began and tearing down a bunch of trees. This is the site where the plant will be. This is the most recent picture we have of the actual factory being built, a 1.2 million square foot factory. We started immediately with some actions. Our first action was in December. You can see the group here when we did a die-in. Okay, and we did that in the center of town. We followed that by joining the celebration of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. And we also did that in town. But then we moved to the bridge site where they began constructing the bridge and protested at the bridge site. You can see here along the road. It's a state highway, so it's a busy highway. We also put out the message of Raytheon's role in the war in Yemen. We then moved to Biltmore Park, which is the home of Biltmore Farms, and Biltmore Farms actually owned the land where the plant's going to be, is being built, and the land was given by Biltmore Farms. And it was a rainy day that day. We went anyway, and here we are. And Ken and some other people walked to the offices of Biltmore Farms to deliver a letter to the CEO. We then moved our actions, which were bi-weekly, to the Chamber of Commerce, downtown Asheville, because the Chamber of Commerce and the Economic Development Corporation, or the coalition, had a central role in bringing Pratt & Whitney to Asheville. We were lucky that there was a overpass nearby, so we did some banner dropping, some cool banners. The last action that we did in the spring was we did a walk from Asheville to the site of the plant. It was a 9-mile walk. We started downtown. We had about, I think by the end of when we reached the bridge site, we had 40 people walking with us. Started with 25, I think. We walked across town. You can see the lead banner there. And we ended up at the bridge site. The walk was while we were walking, there was a group of people, you can see Rachel there, who did tabling in the park where we ended up, and which is along the bridge site and along the river, where we had a rally with some fiery speeches. And after that, we had a healing ceremony at the bridge site, giving some offerings and remembering what what war does. We thought we were going to get arrested, but they didn't arrest us. So then in August, we did a cool thing, which was we paddled down the French Broad River with our signs in our canoes. And we passed out flyers along the way, the people who were floating along in their tubes. So here's the paddling group. And sorry. We've also joined other national demonstrations, and here's one we did just this month with the Keep Space for Peace Action Week. And here's Rachel.
30 seconds, Melody.
Thank you. We walked around town. And just this weekend, we did another action back at the bridge site, focusing on the climate emergency. So we've been quite active, having actions on a regular basis. When we didn't, as Ken said, we have done many other things to keep the awareness in the community. So thank you.
So, welcome all of you. There's a little change in the program, so I'm going to be stepping in, and I trust that the flexibility roll with that in a good way. So what a joy and an honor it is to be able to introduce my friend Ann Wright, Colonel Ann Wright. I first met Ann back in 2005 when she and I, along with other members of Veterans for Peace and other allies, took part in a walk from Mobile, Alabama to New Orleans to assist the victims in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Since then, I've seen her time and time again put herself on the front lines in the fight for peace and justice here at home. And served
2 more people to join them, then we'll have a quorum.
And served for 29 years in the U.S. Army and the Army Reserves, retiring as a colonel before moving on to work in the U.S. State Department.
Marilyn and Will.
Somebody needs to mute themselves.
Oh, so one more. I didn't realize we had a twofer with Marilyn and Will.
Somebody needs to mute themselves.
Oh, awesome. Yay, you, Mary. All right. Well, we're good to go then.
And we got a triple with Matt and the crowd there.
Sorry,
George,
Doug,
can you mute everyone?
Hold on.
Let her up.
Okay, y'all, so I muted everyone, and Doug, I'm gonna actually take that as a sign from above. I've interrupted you, but I've also identified our cultural presenter. So I think we should have them go, yes? Okay, so give me 22.
Hello, can everybody hear me? All right, my name is Johnny Lee Chapman III. I want to thank Ashley Carrington for the opportunity to recite a poem that I wrote in regards to peace. It's actually something I wrote today. So Ken, I understand where you're coming from with feeling the motivation and inspiration of the day. A peacemaker is someone who makes peace. But what is peace? What is the recipe for peace? How does someone create a dish that is both revolutionary and revitalizing? What ingredients must be procured if one wants to serve a piece of peace? The recipe begins with preheating the people. Without a community inspired, your peace will be mushy and inconsistent, so prep accordingly. After the people have the flame of passion lit, you must blend together 2 parts justice and 3 parts joy. Justice because it provides foundation for the dish we never wish to end. And don't skimp on the joy. Matter of fact, empty the whole container because we be joy, the kind of joy that can sweeten any sorrow. Sugar, the toughest salted wound, joy that puts a loving flavor into every moment. Remember, we can't produce joy without love, so add a dash of that, as well as liberty. It usually comes in liquid form because freedom flows like a river, and my people been treading water since we crossed the deep waters and came here with nothing, yet still got in the kitchen and made enough to feed generations. Our secret ingredient, resilience. The ability to resist all the wrongs and horrors life throws at us with head held high. Make sure to mix the materials well before pouring your heart into the crust. Sort the larger segments of salvation and serenity and safety so they don't oversaturate. Then cover the whole concoction with another folded layer of love, the unconditional variety, because we all need a little bit more of that. Set the dish into the heat of the moment, that sort of heat that can heal generational trauma collectively cooked into our consciousness. When it begins to brown like the skin of our people, remove it slowly. Let the meal settle before slicing into it, or you'll see the filling spill. And we've come too close to creating a masterpiece to ruin it just for one hasty piece. Distribute the portions across the communities according to each of their needs. And make sure to save a piece for yourself, for you will need to taste it again to know how to make it. But then again, it doesn't matter the quantity of ingredients, so long as the hands that are creating it are doing so with the purpose for nourishment. So now that you know how to make peace, will you continue the tradition? Will you make peace so that its flavor is felt across all nations? I sure hope you do. This dish is staple to every diet, and we're here because we believe everybody should at least try it. So try peace. Thank you.
Woohoo! Gotta do a woohoo for that.
That was absolutely terrific. I'm so glad that Johnny Lee was able to join us. So let me back up again. I have the great privilege of honoring my friend, Ann Wright, Colonel Ann Wright, who I first met back in 2005 when she and I, along with other members of Veterans for Peace and other allies, took part in a walk from Mobile, Alabama to New Orleans to assist the victims in the immediate aftermath of Hurricane Katrina. Since then, I have seen her time and time again put herself on the front lines in the fight for peace and justice here and at home. Ann served for 29 years in the U.S. Army and the Army Reserves, retiring as a colonel before moving on to work in the U.S. State Department. She served as a U.S. diplomat for 16 years, and in 1997 received the State Department's Award for Heroism for helping to evacuate several thousand people during the Civil War in Sierra Leone. A few years later, she was on a small State Department team that reopened the U.S. Embassy in Kabul, Afghanistan. That was a natural for Anne, who served in the U.S. embassies in Nicaragua, Grenada, Somalia, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Sierra Leone, Micronesia, and Mongolia. In March 2003, she was one of the 3 State Department officials to publicly resign in direct protest of the 2003 invasion of Iraq. She has been an outspoken critic of the U.S. military policies ever since. Anne served as one of the 5 judges at the January 2006 sessions of the International Commissions of Inquiry on Crimes Against Humanity committed by the Bush administration. Her travels have taken her most recently to the North Dakota to support the Native Americans opposing the oil pipeline through sacred lands, a peace mission to Moscow, and to Japan to protest expanded U.S. military base in Okinawa. She's also participated in the Women's Walk to End the Korean War. And in 2016, she took part in the Women's Boat Flotilla in Gaza, bringing worldwide attention to the Israeli embargo on Palestine. Anne was one of 3 recipients of the first annual Truth Out Freedom and Democracy Awards in 2017. She was awarded the U.S. Peace Prize by the U.S. Peace Memorial Foundation for courageous anti-war activism, inspirational peace leadership, and selfless citizen diplomacy. Please welcome our friend and ally, Anne Wright.
Well, thank you so much, Doug. That was a long introduction, I'll tell you, but it's just not me. You all have been doing all of this for so many more years than I have. After I finally got out of the government, saw the light, and got out of the government. I want to thank. I know so many people that are here on the call. It's just great to see you all. I remember coming to a North Carolina Peace Action Award thing many, many, many years ago. John Hewer was alive, presente, and you all have a great organization and lots of organizations all throughout North Carolina that do such great work. And you're honoring today the Muslim Women for and Reject Raytheon. Those are two great organizations that have been working so long. And a good reminder that Joe gave to us that with the origins of Peace Action as an anti-nuke organization, which we definitely, as you all are going to be doing in your month of or your week of virtual lobbying, it is so important that we really go after the expansion of nuclear weapons again. I mean, the United States modernization program, it's just not modernization, it's a new nuclear program. There are new nuclear weapons, the 87-1 that are being created, new types of pits, plutonium pits that are going to be created in Los Alamos and in Savannah River nuclear site. For the first time, Savannah River is going to be used as a plutonium pit producing place. And they've never done it before. They don't even know what they're doing. So it's so important that we lobby hard on eliminating nuclear weapons. The land-based, sea-based, every kind of based missile that we have, all of those are going to be expanded. So really hitting the Congress hard on that is good. And of course, trying to get the horrific war that the U.S. has been a part of on the Yemen, poor old Yemen that's just been decimated. In fact, that was one of the places that I went on a peace mission to Yemen 4 or 5 years ago when the U.S. was, our assassin drones were killing people there and still are. The third thing that you all are are going to be railing rightfully at the Congress about is the military budget. And George, if I could share a screen, I'll do a quick little run through. And
It'll take
George,
me a minute to get it working.
okay, it's so good to see George and to know that your very first job was with SANE. That is so interesting, and we definitely need you and everybody else as a part of this again. So here we are at your North Carolina Peace Action Awards. Congratulations again for 40 years of action here. I want to acknowledge that I am speaking to you. I should be speaking to you from the occupied sovereign nation of Hawaii. That's where I live. But right now I'm in Houston, Texas, where the Karanakawa Native Americans are from. My topic today is really how does the massive Pentagon budget increase when all of us are so against it? I mean, how does this keep happening? Well, we've got a lot of programs now to go after the Pentagon budget. Here's one of the cut the Pentagon budget things. This one comes out of Code Pink Women for Peace. We have been railing against this Pentagon budget for so long, and yet it keeps increasing. Who wants to cut it? Well, there are over 70 organizations that have signed on to many statements saying to cut that budget. Peace Action being one of them, Code Pink, Veterans for Peace, World Beyond War, Win Without War, National Priorities Project, you name it. And the peace group is always against this. We do have allies in Congress, of course, and in fact, Representatives Lee, Pocan, and Ashalas led the charge to try to get 10% of the budget cut for this year. And I'm just going to take a look at all of these people that signed on to it. 50 Congress members, only 50, it should be 400 and whatever it is, 480 something. But these are the ones that signed on, and we should thank them for all of their courage to stand up to say that this military budget needs to be cut. Some of them are people that you know for sure would be for it. Others may not. You may not know. I didn't notice that there was anybody from North Carolina that was on it, so that's a good target. But so we had some people in Congress for it, but not everyone is against it. I mean, but not everyone is against a big budget. What am I trying to say? It means that we have a lot of people that are for that budget. In fact, if we look at the war companies that are making a killing, and one of them is, of course, the Raytheon that you have given your Peacemaker award to reject Raytheon. But of the $15 trillion spent by the Pentagon since 2001, over half of it went to private contractors. Lockheed Martin got part of the top, Raytheon, General Dynamics, Boeing, Northrop Grumman. So how does it increase? It's because of all the lobbying that all of these companies do to our Congress. And it works. I mean, in September, just a month ago, the U.S. House of Representatives voted to approve $78 billion budgets. And a lot of Democrats voted for it, 181 in the House of Representatives voted for that project. So we have a lot of work to do. 135 Republicans did. The Senate has not yet voted on it. And they don't anticipate that the vote will happen until probably December. But here it is, the largest budget increased by $20 billion over what the administration wanted. And this is at a time when finally the US withdrew its troops from Afghanistan. So we have fewer troops out in the field, and yet they're increasing that budget. The two amendments that were put forward to cut the Pentagon budget by tens of billions of dollars failed, as did trying to get the Congress to stop allowing military weapons and equipment to be sent to police organizations. And here it is after we've had such actions in the streets against police violence and police brutality, and yet we can't seem to get that flow of military weapons stopped to police departments. So we need to keep pushing on that. A dozen Democrats joined the Republicans to add $24 billion to the over and above what the administration wanted. Of course, Congress people want big military spending in their districts. Many of the Congress people are owners of stocks in the big defense contractors. 51 Congress people own between 2.3 and $5 million in stocks. Lockheed Martin has 18 Congress people that have 760,000. A third of the members of the Defense Committee and the Appropriations Committee own stocks in the top defense contractors. So these are things that we can hone in on specific Congress people. And I'll go in a little deeper in this because it's quite interesting how much money Sheldon Whitehouse, Democrat, Rhode Island, $348,000 that he owns in stocks in Honeywell, United Technologies, Boeing, Raytheon. John Hoeven from North Carolina, 250,000. Tom Carper from Delaware, 130,000. Rick Scott from Florida, 106,000. Susan Collins, 100,000. Roy Blunt, 100,000. David Perdue, 100,000. And then these are kind of some of the same ones, but I want to go on to this one where the top person in the Congress herself or spouse, and she says it's her spouse, it's Dianne Feinstein, and they have $650,000 in stocks from Boeing. So that's one place that we can work on. And as you do your lobbying in Congress, go after them, and in the House of Representatives, Steve Cohen from Tennessee, 415,000, and Northrop Grumman, Boeing, Raytheon. Jerry Connolly, 400,000 in Leidos. I'll talk a little more about him later. And an interesting one, our dear old friend, the progressive Ro Khanna, he has 376,000. He says it's his wife's, but I guess, if you're, anyway, go after him because he needs to be held accountable for all of these, Boeing, Honeywell, all of these that they have. So the numbers of people that are in Congress that are investing in stocks and want big the big military budget going to contractors, they're making money. They're making money out of all of this. And David Price from North Carolina, $100,000 in Honeywell and United Technologies. And then at the very end of it, Mark Meadows, only 50,000, but 50,000 is a good one to go after him about. Types of kickbacks. We've heard about a lot of them. And here's one that Jerry Connolly, who's in the House Oversight and Reform Committee, he owns 400,000 in a stock called Leidos, which provides information technology services to the Department of Defense. And back in 2019, the head of Leidos went to the Congress saying that they needed the government to guarantee a payback to contractors in the wake of government shutdowns. And, Connolly went ahead, wrote the letter, and they got, they got the payback from the government shutdown. And why is this so important? Well, because the old Pentagon budget is twice as much as anything else. We'll be spending this, I put 240, but it really should be, 740. It should be 780 billion that's going to be spent on the Pentagon. And if you look at what the Build Back Better Act is that the Biden administration is putting out, that they hoped that it would be $3.5 trillion over 10 years, and that makes it 350 billion a year. well, that we know is now going down to probably 1.5 trillion, which will be 150 billion a year compared to 780 billion for defense. So health, education, infrastructure, 150 billion, the Pentagon, 780 billion. Other groups are pointing out how we can cut trillions from the Pentagon budget over the next years, and this is the Congressional Budget Office. So this is available. You can read in the places where they suggest that spending can be cut from the Pentagon budget. If we did cut 10% from the budget, where would it go? Well, relief payments. 5 million people could get monthly relief payments of $1,200. It could pay for 2.4 million hospital stays for COVID patients, or it could pay for 900,000 elementary school teachers, or nearly 1 million clean energy jobs, or healthcare for over 30 million low-income folks. The Pentagon budget being nearly 90 times as big as the CDC budget. So there's a lot of good places, of course, we know, where 10% of that budget should be allocated. And for you all in North Carolina, you are paying, as North Carolina taxpayers, $16 billion a year that go into the US military as a part of that budget. And here you can see how many jobs, how many public housing units, 370,000 jobs that pay $15 an hour with benefits. How much could go into coronavirus vaccines? How many respirators? 268,000 elementary school teachers could be paid for a year. Clean energy jobs, Head Start slots for children, scholarships for university students, so much that we could do for our communities if we didn't have to give it to the US military. As a kind of the final part of this, the military is a polluter and a poisoner. It emits more greenhouse gas than 140 nations. That's a lot. We now know that some of the foam that's used to prevent fires that the military uses on aircraft fires, PFASs are one of the most carcinogenic areas and have polluted military bases, military families, and it's run off into the civilian communities. This is one of the aspects of the militarism that is going to be brought up in the big conference, the big climate conference that begins at the end of this week in Glasgow, Scotland, the COP or Conference of Parties 26. There's a big push to have them at least address the fact that military pollution is not talked about in any of these climate agreements. So be watching. We'll be having online a lot of banners that are in Glasgow about military pollution and the whole militarism of our world. So as kind of an end to all of this, we say that we want to cut the Pentagon budget, cut it big, and cut it forever, and join up with all of these organizations, a few of which that we've depicted here, and of course, Peace Action being one of the great ones. And as you all again thank the two organizations that this year that you have designated as the Peace Award groups, we want to thank our cultural presentations today, Ken and Johnny Lee, for reminding us of the humanity of it all, of whether it's trying to make peace as a recipe of making our communities better, or if it's going up to Line 3, or whether it was at Standing Rock, or whether down in Texas, Matagordo Bay, to join with one of our Vets for Peace environmentalist, Diane Wilson, as she tries to prevent the Corps of Engineers allowing the dredging of a bay that will dig up mercury deposits that have been under a Superfund site for over 30 years. So we have lots of work to do, but you guys and gals in North Carolina are doing great things. It's been a pleasure to be with you, and congratulations to all the Peace Award winners. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Ann. You'll need to stop sharing your screen. And we now invite questions. Questions for either of our award winners tonight, for Muslim Women For or Reject Raytheon, or any questions for Ann.
So before we do
raise
that,
your hand, or go ahead, Doug.
so I was going to say, before we do that, George, and I just want to thank Ann so much for taking time out of her busy schedule, and we could have her on for an hour or more with all of the wealth of information that she has. But given that this is the 40th year for North Carolina Peace Action, I know many of you are supporters and have traveled with us throughout the years. For those of you who have yet to join, there is an opportunity to do that. And there will be a link in the chat room. And for a small amount of money, you can enable us to continue this work. And as it's been offered by all of the presenters, it's important, it's vital. We have a responsibility to the 7 generations coming down the road and the 7 generations beyond that. So if you are feeling a pull to protect the Sacred Mother, to protect the children that are coming, please just step forward and there, George has got it right in there. Go to that link and as John Hure would say, get some jingle and just throw it in the pot. So I'll back up and we'll look for comments for any of the speakers. Thanks, George. Back to you.
Sure. Thank you. So you can put your hand up, and if I see it, that works. Put your hand up. Or you can go down there at the bottom of your screen when it says more, or no, reactions. There's a little smiley face with a plus on it. And one of the things, your reaction you can do is raise your hand. I just raised mine. See there? You can raise your hand. Or if you're comfortable with the chat, you can type in the chat. I think people are typing. I can't really tell.
Could be a shy group.
And you have your hand up on for real?
Yeah, I'd like to ask Raytheon, what Reject Raytheon, what types of evil things are they going to be making in that that facility?
Well, and they are, Pratt & Whitney is the division that's coming here, division of Raytheon, and what they do is make components for jet engines. So they're going to make what are called airfoil turbines for jet engines. They say they're going to do both commercial and military. 30% of their production as it exists now in Connecticut and elsewhere is for fighter jets, F-15s, F-16s, and F-35s.
So they'll be making engines for F-16s, F-13s, or F-35s,
Right.
chances are.
That's right.
I did read a question in the chat for Muslim Women For, and let me find it again. Christina Calger asked this question. Christina, do you want to come off mute and ask it yourself?
Sure, thank you.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, George. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm really impressed by the work of both the recipient organizations, and thank you, Anne, for such a fact-filled presentation that we could all use, I think, the details from, if we could get access to them. But the question for Muslim Women For is, what can we be doing, what action steps can we take to support your work here in North Carolina? Because obviously Islamophobia it continues to be a huge problem in our public lives. So is there something we can be doing, to actively support the work that you're doing in solidarity with you?
Thank you so much, Christina, for that question. I really appreciate it. And I will encourage everyone to follow us on our social media platforms. We use Instagram and Facebook primarily to engage with our supporters and our people. So that's a really good space to just kind of get a better sense of what campaigns we're working on, different action items we're putting together. Most recently, as you all know, North Carolina lawmakers announced redistricting maps for the state. And there were public hearings that were happening yesterday and today, which came out of nowhere. It was really hard to mobilize our communities to even submit comments. And that makes it very challenging for an emerging group like us that is smaller in capacity to be able to pull together resources and information to make sure our communities have what they need to be able to take action and bring more, bring back power into their communities. And so that was something recently we put together and are continuing to work on. So I invite you all to follow our work and I'll put it in the chat. And also we have an amazing website, muslimwomen4.org. And so we haven't had an in-person event in a long time, as many groups probably share this experience because of COVID, but we have started a sexual and reproductive health kind of project and campaign and started doing a lot of work around reproductive justice for the very first time for our community, which we're really excited about expanding over the next couple of months and into the next year. So I encourage you to stay kind of in the loop with that and how that is going to kind of unfold. And of course, I would love for you to also consider donating to our work and supporting our work where you're able to. I think Muslim Women For and a lot of emerging groups are not always at the top of the list when it comes to funders, especially, an organization that's led by Muslim women, and that's just something real. That's a challenge that we're often having to navigate. So that is always really, really supportive and helpful. And I'll drop in the chat where you can follow us and engage with our work.
Christina, I would also ask you to put in the chat a link to Stop Torture Now, which is very, very important work that you have done, and will let's hope that it will be lessened, but it's critical that people become aware of that and they can go to that link also. So thank you. Thank you both.
Any other questions?
And it's the women who are leading here. And I don't mean that in any disrespect to the men. I hear the men out there too. I want, but many of the women need to be blessed for their courage for stepping up and stepping in and doing this work. I thank you.
I'm doing my last round of looking for hands. Doug, you're looking in the chat for questions.
Yeah, it says, I'll just read one. Mary Ryder, I'm very frustrated that so many people do not make the connections between the war industrial complex and the climate change when it's the biggest contributor to the destruction of our world. Comment, please. I know Anne has addressed that, but others may have that too. The U.S. military is the biggest polluter of all of the polluters. But Anne, do you want to say any more on that, or anybody
Sure.
else who would be able to pick up on that?
Yeah. Well, one of the things you have to be careful about with the old military is that they try to greenwash a lot of stuff. And so while they do have on most military installations, we're trying to make this green, we're trying to do this, we're trying to do that, but it's all to cover up the fact that all of these big planes taking off, landing, all of the tanks, all of these pieces of equipment are really bad polluters. And so they may save some ducks on a pond on a military base, but that does not mean that these instruments of war are not polluting. And it's up to us as citizens to get the facts. And there's plenty of websites out there about emissions from various kinds of military equipment that you can use to put in a fact sheet and use it in these military communities. And you've got plenty of them in North Carolina. I spent 3 long years of my life at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. And between the military, the Marine bases, the Air Force bases, the Army bases that you have some of the greatest of the military polluters right there in North Carolina. And having some fact sheets that you can put out would be very useful to your communities. Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. And Christina has, go ahead. Go ahead, George.
I was reading a comment that was typed by Mary Ryder about Pachamama, and I don't know if she means Pachamama Alliance, had 50 steps about what you could take action around. If you're in a position, and I can't find it now, once you see something in the chat and you try to find it again, it's like, well, where was it? So Mary Ryder, I think I read that correctly. If you are adept and can put a link in the chat, that'd be great. Otherwise, we would have to look for, yes, Pachamama Alliance, great people, but apparently they did not include addressing the military in their 50 steps to help the planet. So not so great in that sense. Any other comments or questions?
I just want to elaborate on that. I think that we have been sold a bill of goods that if we just change our light bulbs or stop eating meat, that somehow we're going to save this planet. It's really not up to individuals. It's up to the corporations and the military that are the great destroyers, and they're the ones who have to make the changes, and it's up to us to hold them to it.
Word. Thank you, Vicki. I've got Jerry and Kathy, and then Ann Craig, and then Ellen Canavan.
Thank you, George. Well, this is Jerry Marketus, and next week at about this time, well, 7:30 on Tuesday night, Patrick O'Neill will be speaking to the group Balance and Accuracy in Journalism about his and a team of people who did an action in Georgia in opposition to nuclear weapons. Hooray for Patrick. And we really appreciate that he will be speaking to us not only about that as a journalist. Patrick has so many issues in mind. And while he was in prison, which he has just recently left, he developed deep insights into what was going on, who gets there, how it happens, and changes that need to be made. So this is the right group to announce this to, and I thank you all for all the work that you're doing in so many ways.
Thank you both for the support that you give us in all different ways. And Craig?
Excuse me, I did put my email address in the chat. So anyone who's not on the list for that already, just let me know and I'll send you the info. Thanks.
Thank you, Jerry.
Thank you, Jerry.
And Craig, go ahead.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Colonel Wright her thoughts about why the Americans overall are so ignorant to the incredible situation about the military. The military is so humongous. It gets so much of our tax money. It prosecutes wars that are completely unsuccessful, wind up being tragedies like Afghanistan, Iraq, Yemen. And yet it's only a niche group of activists, although there are many groups, but it's still not common knowledge, what we're up against here. And as was said, it's getting worse. They're getting more money, even though they're complete, if they worked for anybody, they'd be fired because they're so incompetent and they're so unaccountable. Why don't more people know about this?
Well, the military has the largest PR system in the world. They spend billions of dollars to make sure that the military is seen in the best light possible. They spend more money on flyovers at football games than we have. If you put every peace group in America together in our little budgets, we probably couldn't pay for 1 hour of gas for one of the planes that does the flyovers. And then when you add to that, all of the corporations that are making a killing out of this, the trillions of dollars these organizations have. And if you look in every subway system of every city in our country that has a subway, and there aren't that many of them, quite honestly, but they'll all have pictures of jets. Like if you go into Washington, D.C. and New York City, there are giant posters of jets with Northrop Grumman or Lockheed. I mean, it is a powerful, powerful PR system that we're up against. And so it's no wonder that, that we have a difficult time getting to sufficient people that can really carry the message that we want this military reduced in size and the budget reduced. And that's why we've had some success. And whoever thought we would get 50 members of Congress to sign on to cutting the military budget? That's a major step over the last couple of years. So we got to keep pushing these Congress people as well as our communities. Thank you.
Christina, I'd like you to unmute yourself. I know you put a piece in the chat. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit on that. We still have a little time.
Sure. Thanks, Doug. I think that the problem of U.S. kidnapping and torture during the so-called war on terror is quite related to tonight's theme in several ways, including that it was a failed piece of the war on terror, which was entirely directed against Muslim populations in Muslim majority nations, and in which people have suffered inordinate costs in terms of drone killings and midnight raids by the CIA and other, bombings in Afghanistan, which the American people, by and large, either have not fully internalized or don't understand how the war on terror has been such an abject failure and human rights abuse. So the part of that we've been working on is North Carolina's hosting of torture taxis, which are aircraft not employed by civilian contractors, in this case, aero contractors based in North Carolina, that ferried dozens, maybe hundreds of Muslim people to secret indefinite detention and torture, for which there has never been any accountability and very, very little transparency. So the goal of our work has been to get the state and, of course, the federal government to acknowledge and investigate. This is obviously only one piece of bringing peace, but it's an important way to demonstrate that we don't support or accept the Islamophobic rationale for U.S. Kidnapping and torture, which is that if Muslim populations can be dehumanized, either here or abroad, then we can take away their human rights and we can abuse them. And there will be no accountability. There will basically be impunity. So I think that's why it's important to take action on that.
If I could just add to that, I mean, we have two cases going on right now where it's, essentially, it's going to be, same tactics. The Venezuelan diplomat that has now been extradited out of Spain to the United States for violation of U.S., whatever it is. And you look at Julian Assange. I mean, the U.S. trying to get him extradited, and tomorrow is a hearing in the British courts about it. And then you can also add into some of these, I would say, many of the flights that the U.S. government is doing to deport people into areas that we know they're going to get killed. Like all the, we definitely have a problem at the border, but I'll tell you, it just breaks my heart when we see plane loads of people being pushed back into Haiti, knowing full well that they're going to get kidnapped or killed by the gangs that are there. And the same for Honduras and El Salvador. It's heartbreaking to see what's what's going on. And in one way, I would call those torture taxis too. Thank you.
Ellen, you
So-
have been very, very patient waiting. Can you unmute yourself?
And I
make
get
a
to
comment?
have my joyous reminder of being the clock watcher. And
Okay.
Ellen, we are at time for questions and answers. So we can either all accept that we're gonna run over, or Ellen can sacrifice her question. Your choice, Ellen. No
Okay.
pressure.
Gotta unmute.
Yeah, you're muted. You're chatting away, but we can't hear you.
Clock's running.
There you go.
Comment. I just wanted to say thank you for illuminating the extent to which Congress people own stocks. I mean, we heard about Burr and the other one, and it was a big brouhaha about that they were trading on insider trading or something like that. But where did you get all that information? It's just fascinating, and I want to get a copy of it so that when I write them, I can mention it.
Very good. I can tell that Ann is putting it in the chat instead of taking more time so that we can possibly end on time. That's awesome.
I'll send the PowerPoint to Peace Action and you all can distribute it.
Thank
Beautiful.
you.
Thank you so much. And now it is my very good honor and joy to introduce Truth Can Do.
Can you all hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so this piece starts, poetry is not about me. Standing here in front of you, what do you see? I am but a mere morsel of the prophecy. There are more of me. Raise your hand if you understand, whether it be here in this room with me or at home reading. Listen to me. In front of you, what do you see? You too may be a mere morsel of the prophecy. There are more of us. Raise your hand if you understand. If not, give it a moment, let it sink in. I've been called to service, to speak, to build, and to feed. I had a dream that I was like a John the Baptist. I know that may not have been his name, and I'm not about the Baptist part, but still follow me. The zealousness that was in this man's soul 5 years ago, I never seen in me. How am I supposed to do that? I remember I asked, Spirit whispered, peace, releasing the negative emotion and formatting a strategy. Makers of peace, we must continue the legacy. Triumphing over defeat, repairing the infrastructure. Don't get it confused. This is not about them. This is about you, us, and our allies. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Truth, for sharing that with us. I'm really, really honored to be here and be present with you guys. This is a big honor to share in speaking about what we all do in working for peace. So thank you so much, Truth, for sharing. And again, thank you, Johnny Lee Chapman, also for sharing such wonderful and powerful words with us earlier. So as George mentioned, I am Ashley Carrington, and today I'm going to be sharing with you guys just a few things in regards to cultural calls to action and what we all can do as those who are working continuously for peace can also be aware of things that sometimes can happen in terms of blind spots. And so as crusaders for peace and justice across our world, all strive to attain some meaningful measure of justice against the numerous evils and inequalities that plague us. It is so easy to identify racial inequity, totalitarianism, militarism, environmental degradation, and human rights violations. But it is much harder to identify the permeating nature of white supremacy and its contributions to our own personal unawareness of not being culturally aware and culturally competent. As champions for peace, the relationships we build in this journey strengthen us. They give us a reason to affect change, and more importantly than that, to be change. But despite the fact that our society has become more culturally diverse and globalized, the issues surrounding inequality, bias, and the breakdowns in intercultural communications persist. And as workers of peace, these are things we definitely need to be aware of. So in 2017, the FBI reported that there were almost 6,000 reported instances of hate crimes in the United States. And of these, almost 60% had racial or ethnic motivations. 20% were around sexual orientation, and 17% involved religion. There are also numerous bias instances, persistent inequalities around racial and ethnic lines, and institutional policies that perpetuate inequalities at both the individual and institutional levels. One need not look beyond recent news reports to find that ethnic tensions persist. Research on microaggressions, i.e. regular or daily subtle and minor acts of bias that may be consciously or unconsciously expressed, illustrate this point and show that even subtle instances can have cumulative and serious consequences for socio-emotional well-being. As champions for peace, we have to be aware of these small things that we unconsciously may allow into our work, into our relationships, and into our interactions, because these negative effects are evident not just for the victims of biases, but also research suggests that stereotyping, bias, and instances of microaggressions not only affect the victim, but to a hostile environment for everyone working in a broader setting. So that can mean even if we ourselves are striving constantly every day for peace, if we're not also doing that internal work and digging to make sure that the things that have permeated our education system, our social circles, and those peers that we interact with, maybe outside of our normal work, we have these little nuanced issues that can also affect how we move forward. And holding those biases and prejudices also keep us further apart as we try to strive and reach across the aisle for peace and for actual justice. So these bias and stereotypes having these negative effects, we have the power to change them. So how do we do that? How do we interact respectfully and knowledgeably with all the people in our lives who exist outside of our inner circle? People whose culture and worldview may be removed from our own. And how do we use those differences to strengthen our bonds as humans, as peacemakers, and as crusaders for justice? To love openly and to love anyway, we've got to reject internalized relationships with racism and white supremacy that keep us from becoming culturally aware and competent. Our cultural competence is known as the ability to understand and interact effectively with people from other cultures. And in our peace work, we do that so often. So it's very important to make sure we're aware of those things. Developing cultural competence is a process, and it's not going to happen overnight. Just like with any skill, the process of development and improvement continues with all of us. And it's never going to be to a that's it, I've reached it point, but there are many ways in which we can increase our capacity to be effective in our interactions with others as we move forward and push back against the systems that oppress us all. And just to have a loose understanding of multicultural competence and awareness, you got to understand your own culture. You've got to be willing to learn about cultural practices and worldview of others. Have a positive attitude towards cultural differences and a readiness to accept and respect those differences. Cultural competence is important because without it, our opportunity to build those relationships is literally impossible. And instead, we'll coexist with people we don't understand, which creates a higher risk of misunderstanding. And so the best way to do this is to immerse yourself, to pay attention, to listen, to use your imagination and show genuine interest and empathy. And whether it's cooking dinner, engaging in a language lesson, learning from someone that is willing to share with you more about their culture, or inviting them to do the same into your world, you'll be both a better person, a better crusader, and a better human in our global community, having just done those very simple things. Thank you all very much for your time and attention. I appreciate all of the work that you guys are doing, and let us continue our crusade for peace.
Thank you so much, Ashley Carrington. You know, putting some learning about culture as part of our cultural work is really important and feels like a good new learning area for me. Although I'm not really welcoming too many life lessons past 60. I'm just, not feeling it anymore. All that stuff about, it makes you stronger. And, you know, this is a life lesson. I'm like, you know, I've had a lot of life lessons already. Glad to be here with y'all this evening. And thank you so much for your time and energy. So earlier on, I talked about the protocols and I mentioned us using the chat, which the chat is rocking. That means you want to save it. So I'm going to play a great video and you're going to save the chat. If you don't quite know how to do that, look down towards the bottom of your screen or look towards your keyboard, you know, and you'll see across the bottom a bunch of stuff, and all the way to my right, which might be your left, there are 3 little dots that say more. If you click on those dots, one of them should say save chat, and then you can save the chat. There's a cheater option though, which I'm going to tell you about because you're special people. And that is, we're recording this. And I will send out a link to the recording and the chat to everyone who registered for this event. And that includes you because you're here. Thanks so much. One more time, I want to put the link in to join. We would love to have you as a member of Peace Action, North Carolina Peace Action. We will soon have an online member group gathering like we did this spring. So we'll get together like now, except we'll talk a lot more with each other. So, you know, you won't have me going, and now your time's up quite so much. It's not like I won't ever do that at all, but not quite so much. So I'm going to share the screen and give you a chance to save the chat while we end. And thank you again so very, very much.
I'm calling out to the whole wide world. Help me scream and shout that we want peace. Big love to Emmanuel Jao.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I'm looking for some people who's looking for peace. Maybe together we could make the war cease. Now we can send mankind to the moon, and we can reach to the bottom of the sea. That's why it's really kinda baffles me that we cannot end wars and bring peace, and we cannot change the way people act, and we cannot change the way people think. So if we sit back, chill out and relax, civilization will soon be extinct. That's why I am